Hello, everyone. It's Royce here, and I want to welcome you all to my Royce in the House YouTube channel. Got a fun video for you today. John Lennon wrote a letter to Eric Clapton trying to form a supergroup with him after the breakup of the Beatles. So let's just get right into it. But first of all, folks, please do one thing for me. Hit the thumbs up button, also referred to as the like button. It helps the show get spread to a wider audience of people searching for content. Does nothing but help the show. It doesn't cost anything, of course. Okay, so John Lennon letter inviting Eric Clapton to join a new supergroup is to be sold at auction. All right, he's going to auction. It's going to be auctioned off. Okay, 1971 letter written by John Lennon proposes a new supergroup including Klaus, Voormann, Phil Spector to bring back the balls in rock and roll, according to Lennon. And this is how he wrote it, okay? I'll show a couple of pages at the end of the letter, okay? Lennon wanted Eric Clapton to join the supergroup alongside Phil Spector in the early 1970s in order to once again bring back the balls to rock and roll, according to an 8-page letter that is being auctioned. And I will be showing you a couple of pages of that 8-page letter at the end here. So please stay tuned for that. If you like the content, please consider subscribing. We have a lot of great shows. We have shows that go from 6 or 7 minutes, pre-recorded like this one, all the way up to 3 hours plus. Okay. We cover classic rock. We have several different shows on classic rock. Okay. So the letter was written a few weeks after the release of the song Imagine, and showed that Lennon was considering a dramatic shift in styles as for his post-Beatles solo career. So he wanted to change directions for his post-Beatles solo career, which was actually taking off at the time. Okay, so the letter dated September 29th, 1971. Lennon writes about his desire to bring back the vibrant rock sound, okay, bolstered by Hendrix blues rock guitar, while outlining his vision for a new musical project that also aimed to revolutionize live performances. So John Lennon was going to revolutionize live performances. The letter describes in detail his proposal to form a nucleus group with musicians including Klaus Voormann, who drew the cover for the Beatles' Revolver album and played with Yoko Ono. Jim Keltner, Nicky Hopkins, who played on records by the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and the Wall of Sound producer Phil Spector, who later was actually convicted of murder in 2009. We won't talk about that anymore. Lennon told Clapton he and Yoko rate you, Clapton, and your music very highly. Clapton had already joined one supergroup, Cream, with Ginger Baker, Jack Bruce, amazing drummer. Ginger Baker, to me, and I was a teenager at the time, was considered the best drummer in rock and roll at the time by everybody I knew anyway. And Jack Bruce, bass and his vocals on Cream was just incredible. Okay, so Lennon suggested the new group would have Voormann, who played with Manfred Mann on bass, the session star Keltner on drums, and Hopkins on keys and piano, with Clapton on lead guitar and Lennon on vocals, presumably Spector at the controls as producer. Okay, so Lennon continues, "You must know by now that Yoko and I rate your music and yourself very highly. You also know the music we have been making and hope to make, all right," wrote Lennon, before referring to George Harrison's charity concert for Bangladesh, which took place in August 1971. So after missing the Bangladesh concert, we began to feel more and more like going on the road, but not the way I used to with the Beatles, he added. He went on to say, "I consider Klaus, Jim, Nicky, Phil, Yoko, and you could make the kind of sound that could bring back the huevos to rock and roll." So anyway, Lennon wanted to approach touring in a completely different and new way. Rather than, nightly torture he experienced out on the road with the relentless schedule of the Beatles, he wanted Clapton to be part of a group that, formed naturally around the music business. John Lennon proposed forming a nucleus group of musicians. I know I can bring out something great in you, John said to Eric in the letter. I hope to bring out the same kind of greatness in all of us, he writes. No one will be asked to do anything they don't want to. No contracts. We're not asking for your name. It's your mind we want, Lennon went on to tell Clapton in the letter. The prospect of touring internationally is also suggested in the letter. Lennon expressing interest in audiences in Russia, China, Tahiti, Tonga, New Zealand, and Australia. He wanted to get to some places that were being, passed over for one reason or another. Leonard would go on to work with Phil Spector again in his final studio album, Rock and Roll, a covers album where he returned to the songs that inspired him as a young musician in Liverpool. Spector produced Let It Be, the Beatles' final studio album. His final collaboration with Yoko Ono, Double Fantasy, was released in 1980, a few weeks before his murder in New York. And boy, what a shock that was. I'll never forget. I woke up that morning and my wife goes, Royce, I don't know if I was dreaming or what, but the TV was on and the news was on and I was half asleep and half awake. And they said John Lennon died, but I don't know if I was dreaming or what. So we went back, got the news back on, and sure enough, John Lennon had been shot. It's a crazy little story that went with that from us. The letter is the latest artifact up for auction to shed new light on the Beatles' connections to Clapton, who had an affair with George Harrison's first wife, Pattie Boyd. George was no saint, Earlier this year, Christie's auctioned several revealing letters from Clapton to Boyd while he was married to Harrison, or she was married to Harrison, providing insight into one of rock's most notorious love triangles, So in a 1970 letter, Clapton writes to Boyd, what I wish to ask you is that, do you still love your husband? Or if you have another lover? All of these questions are very impertinent, I know, but there is still a feeling. Is there still a feeling in your heart for me? You must let me know. Speaking to Christie's, Boyd said she initially thought it was a letter from a weird fan. She didn't even know it was from Eric, and only realized what it was after Clapton followed up on the phone. Her memorabilia eventually sold for almost £3 million. The Lennon letter goes on sale December 5th. The letter Lennon wrote to Clapton about forming the supergroup goes on sale December 5th. The owner timing the sale to come shortly after the release of Martin Scorsese's Beatles 64 documentary, which is out this week. Okay, folks, so that's what I wanted to talk about. I've got a couple of pictures that I want to show of the letter. And I'll bring them up now. Here's one of the pages, and I'm not going to try to read through this John Lennon chicken scratch in cursive. I have tried, and it would take a long time because it's just kind of a mess. But anyway, that's part of the letter. Here's another part of the letter. All right, well, we covered the gist of all of this in the show we just did. So anyway, I want to thank everybody that watched. Please do me a favor, like I said at the beginning, hit that thumbs up button. Please subscribe to the channel. We have subscriptions. We're building our subscription base. The show's been growing. We even have a membership that people join to help support the show. But at the very least, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button. Doesn't cost a thing. And that's what's happening in Royce's world today. Thank you all so very much for joining me.